Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back with a brand new deck profile for you guys today, and a fabulous new mat here. For those of you who have been following my channel for a while, you know that Psychics have pretty much been my go-to deck. I just love how the archetype plays. I love the Naturia Synchro, so the fact that they're Earth monsters is just an awesome coincidence. But I like their unique playstyle and the ability for them to handle pretty much any situation decently well. They kind of were falling by the wayside in terms of my priority because I just didn't think that the way I was building them with cranes and stuff, more of a Grand Soil-esque type of deck, was really working when they hit Teleport to 2, they hit Redox to 0. It just wasn't working out the way it had in the past. After taking just a bit of a break away from Psychics, I found out, or rediscovered, I guess, the Banish Psychic element of it that I haven't really looked into all that much in the past. I used to just write it off as something that was too inconsistent, but when I rediscovered Telekinetic Powerwell, I realized that there's actually a pretty good synchro climbing strategy that you can create using Psychics that'll allow you to go for a lot of new big hitters like the Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. So this is that type of a deck that I'll be doing for you guys. As usual, this profile will be in kind of a let's build type of a format. So I'll be going through momentarily my card choices, building the deck from the ground up so you can see my thought process and why certain cards are in the deck versus others. And then at the end, you'll be able to see the alphabetical deck profile that you're probably used to from other channels. That format is, pretty standard. You can skip to that by clicking the Telekinetic Powerwell right here. That'll jump you over to that profile. Other than that, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as we build this deck together. So first, to establish the theme of the deck, we are of course playing Psychics, so we're going to start off with 2 copies of Emergency Teleport. This powerhouse you guys may have seen from its use in Cosmos and its use in the Quantums recently, but if you're not familiar with it, it's a quick play spell that lets you special summon a level 3 or lower Psychic-type monster from your hand or deck, but banish it during the end phase if it wasn't used and it stayed on the field that turn. This has always been the crux of the Synchro strategy for Psychics, being able to fetch you all of your key pieces, make your big plays, make your synchro plays, make your jumper plays, whatever. It got you the consistency that you needed. But as it's going down to 2 and probably to 1 sometime in the future, I needed some way to play around that missing part, but we'll get to that in just a second. In addition to that, we are going to be playing a full set of Serene Psychic Witch for our consistency. So Serene Psychic Witch is still a decent floater. Lately she doesn't trigger as much, but pretty much it says when she's destroyed from the field and sent to the graveyard, you can banish a Psychic from your deck with 2,000 or less attack. Then during the next standby phase of the very next turn, might be your opponent's, might be your own, that the effect is activated, you special summon the monster that you banished. So it's interesting that these banished Psychics work in such a way that you banish your monsters that you want to tutor out from the deck, and then they get special summoned from the banish area. There's not officially a zone or anything, obviously, but you get to bring out those cards from the special banish, and then you get an effect based on that. To mimic Teleport and fill in that role, I'm actually going to be looking at 3 Telekinetic Powerwell today. So this is another quick play spell, that says you could special summon any number of level 2 or lower Psychic-type monsters from your graveyard. You take damage equal to the total levels of those monsters times 200. So this was amazing back in the day with Mindmaster because it allowed you to go bring back Mindmaster, bring back a level 2 tuner on top of that, and then use Mindmaster's effect to loop through all of your Psychic monsters, basically search out everything you need in the deck, and with Hyper Librarian, you would basically draw a bunch of cards while putting together a massive field. Mindmaster is unfortunately banned because it's part of a lot of dumb loops, but I found that there are some ways that you could support Telekinetic Powerwell to actually make it, in many ways, even better than a single teleport could be. To make that work, we're going to be playing the 2 Psychic Jumper we always do. It's a level 2 Earth Tuner that says, once per turn you can pay 1,000 life to target one of your non-Psychic Jumper, Psychic monsters, and a face-up monster your opponent controls. Swap those 2 monsters, and if you do, their battle positions cannot be changed this turn. So this basically is a creature swap that you can force activate. You could choose any monster that can be targeted, which is awesome. And you get to choose, so you get to steal their strongest monster, or the one that they'll have the most trouble getting around, unlike the spell card creature swap, which basically is not that good when your opponent has more than 1 monster on the board. So I've always been playing this thing. You basically let Witch die, or you get a teleport to set up any Psychic monster or jumper or whatever you need, bring out the other piece, make a swap play, and you can even synchro using your opponent's monster using jumper, and then you could start seeing some synergy where if you send over a witch, you can kill that witch with your new monster and then go and continue the cycle of the deck by searching. So we're doing that just like we always have, but I will be playing 2 copies of Esper Girl. This is something that I always thought was slower in a deck like Grand Solo Psychics. Esper Girl reads, if this banished card is special summon, remove the top card of your deck from play face down. Then when this card is sent to the graveyard from the field, that card is added to your hand, and that doesn't miss timing because it's not a when you can optional effect. It's a when mandatory trigger. So this is actually a good source of free pluses that will help you make synchro summons without losing advantage. And it's a level 2 monster that we can use with Telekinetic Powerwell. In order to make sure that we can get its effect off, we want to summon it off of Witch, which we tend to crash in the early game in the opponent's monsters just to get things rolling. But another way you can use it is Hush Psychic Cleric. This is a 2100 defense monster. When he's normal or flip summoned, he changes to defense automatically, so you have that 2100 defense to help you. Then you can discard any card from your hand to target and banish a Psychic monster in your graveyard. Then when this card is sent to the graveyard, again, it can't miss timing, so you could use it for synchros or whatever, you get to summon one of those banished monsters from this card's effect. So that means you can get an Esper Girl, you can get some nice utility out of Jumper by reusing him, get your Witch, or any of the other Psychics we're going to add to the deck. You can fetch them with Hush Psychic Cleric. But one of the main things you want to do is ideally set up a Jumper or set up a Psychic Witch play turn 1 to get an Esper Girl out. Once this thing dies, you can just go get a free card, summon your Cleric turn 2, use its effect to then tether onto Esper Girl, and you could basically use Teleport. If you have other level 2 tuners, you can use Powerwell, bring out a tuner, start synchroing, and you could bring out monsters to keep building your board. And finally, for the main Psychics, we're also going to be playing the Silent Psychic Wizard, 2 of this. This is a 1900 beater that's very similar to Cleric. It says when it's normal summoned, you can select a Psychic in your grave, remove it from play, and then when this card is sent to the graveyard, special summon that monster. So it doesn't have the looping capabilities of Cleric in that you can't just Cleric another Cleric, switch them, use Cleric again, switch them, use Cleric, and so on. It's only one time, but as a 1900 beater and a level 4 Earth monster, it has a lot of utility for synchro summons, and the fact that you don't need to discard a card makes him a lot simpler of a threat, because you can just combo him with one of these 2, or with Witch setting up a tuner, just normal into it and get that free plus anyway. So, this is the typical Banish Psychic lineup that you'll probably see if you've seen this deck anywhere else, but the way that I've played this deck is by running 3 copies of Curry Bandit. So Curry Bandit is something that you guys may have seen before in other types of decks. Basically, during the end phase of the turn that it's normal summoned, you could tribute it, excavate the top 5 of your deck, and then if you see a spell or trap, you can choose one of them and add that card to your hand. So Curry Bandit lets you go, load your grave with some Psychic monsters, especially your level 2s, then you can go and fetch some of your spell cards, your power spells, so that you make sure you see not only the now semi-limited emergency teleport, but also the new telekinetic Powerwell that we've added. It actually does give up the turn, yes, but we're going to make sure we play enough defenses that we don't die to a first turn Curry Bandit, and then we'll be able to fetch all of our key spells while loading up cards we need for the rest of our plays. And now it's time to check out the main deck with other cards that will help us play in whatever environment we're playing against. In my case, of course, I'll be playing against some of my friends that will be different than like the World Championship qualifier metas, regionals, YCSs, even your locals will all be playing in different environments, so feel free to customize the following section as you would like. But I'll give my explanation on some of these and why I think you should be playing some of these if you have a similar situation. So first off, I run 3 Pot of Duality, and the reason I run this is this thing lets you go, you can't special summon the turn obviously, but it lets you go Bandit turn 1. It lets you go Witch because you can crash it, and because the Witch summons during the following turn, it never conflicts with Duality when you're the one piloting that crash. If you decide to go and add a hand trap that we'll get in a bit, or you just want to get ready for a big power play in the following turn, we're going to add enough defenses that Pot of Duality is something that you can always play at 3. And so, in testing, I found that I've never really wanted to cut it down. It just gets you to all your key cards, makes sure that you get the most out of playing your 3 Curry Bandits. And again, it's just, I guess, the way I've built the defense to work with Duality. There will be times that you want to special summon, but if you pretty much use this properly as a setup card to go and make your big pushes happen, this deck has no problem running 3 dualities. For some of the tech psychics, we run 2 Psy Blocker and 1 Psychic Commander. Where is it? There it is, Psychic Commander. So Psy Blocker is a very funny card that says, once per turn you can declare a card name. Cards with that name and their effects cannot be used until the end of your opponent's next turn. Now, use has a very, very weird definition in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card game. It pretty much means you can't use any card effect, you can't attack with it, change its battle position, you can't use it to start a summon, you can't inherently summon it, you basically can't do anything with it, and anything that is effect-driven is untethered, undone, whatever. So individual rulings on this card are really hard to come by, but pretty much this thing lets you get around some of the dumbest situations that you can, helps you get around weird floodgates and stuff, and when you can tether, or you can tutor for this card, excuse me, with Serene Psychic Witch, or recycle it with your Banish Psychics from the graveyard, this becomes a really powerful tool, and actually this is why I'm running this instead of MST or Twin Twisters, is because this deck doesn't really need to play inconsistent back row removal when you can have Psy Blocker block those, as well as out floodgates. Then you have the Psychic Commander. This is really in here just to go into Churia Barkion in the extra deck, because sometimes you do play against a trap-heavy deck, especially if you're playing anything with Cosmo, you're going to want to be able to fight through back row. The access to a level 3 Earth Tuner really does help ensure that you could summon Barkion reliably, and that just becomes a single main-decked searchable card that lets me deal with entire back row. So that's pretty much my back row brigade, if you will. 2 cards that can take the most advantage of the tuner monsters are Mythic Water Dragon and Mind Control. So Water Dragon basically says if you have an Earth monster, you can special summon it from your hand for free, and you can only play one of them that way. 1,000 attack and 2,000 defense means it's not very useful, but it's a level 8 monster, so combine it with a level 2, you can suddenly go Leo. Combine it with a level 3, you could suddenly go Star Eater. So this is actually a really, really good card in this deck. At 1, it almost never is dead. In fact, I can't recall in the last couple weeks of testing any game where I've actually drawn this as a dead card. It always lets me go Leo or Star Eater. Just a phenomenal card to turn any of your dead tuners that you can then set up for recycling with your Psychic monsters or your Power Well. Then you have Mind Control, does a similar thing. Steal your opponent's big monsters like Beals, or, you know, like, in my meta, I play against Chaos Dragons, I play against Yang Zings. I could just steal one of those big guys and Synchro using those monsters. Because this deck plays so many tuners, you know, the way it's designed as a Synchro Climb deck, you actually do want to make sure that you have outs to your opponent's cards that let you take use of those, or make use of those tuner monsters. And Mind Control does a phenomenal job of that. Power spells, we play 1 Raigeki. Everyone knows pretty much if you're attacking for game, you probably want Raigeki. This really is also to out things like the Vanities and Majesty's Fiend that I face in my meta, as well as just annoying cards like Leo you might want to get rid of with Raigeki. Soul Charge is actually something I added very recently. My original build of Psychics did not have this, or at least the original build of Banish Psychics didn't, because I thought I would be paying too much life with Power Well. What I found, though, is with the tech I ended up choosing, especially with Curry Bandit, you can fetch this thing really reliably, load your grave for it early on. This thing lets you put together the most insane boards, as you will see when we get to the extra deck. It has not disappointed me thus far, and I would consider it pretty much the replacement for that last teleport. It's pretty much your 6th quick play spell for your power spells. Then we're going to go to the defenses. This is the last part of the deck. We have 2 Effect Failure. I had originally been playing 3, but I found since it overlaps quite a bit with Ghost Ogre, maining the 3rd Effect Failure wasn't what I needed to do when I needed some extra room for cards like Soul Charge. So we play 2 and 2. Ghost Ogre is amazing because you can recycle this again and again. You can go and fetch this thing with Serene Psychic Witch. You have so much more access to this card than you do in any other deck. So you get to use this as a level 3 tuner. It helps you go for Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. You can use it for its effect. It'll keep coming back and destroying all your opponent's cards as 1-for-1s. It is a phenomenal tuner in this deck. Definitely recommend running 2 of these. As kind of your tech psychics, but I decided to categorize it here as defenses because that's what I usually use it for. Veiler is just to supplement it, so total of 4 essentially. Then we play 3 Jurigato. This card you may have seen me use in some of my older psychic builds. I love it for all of those old reasons. Pretty much you get to use it as a non-tuner when you have a dead tuner in your hand, but it also allows your big control monsters, your Naturia Beast, your Clear Wing Synchro Dragon, your Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, all these guys get an attack pump that makes it really hard for your opponent to deal with. You can even power up your Psy Blocker to 2200 attacker, makes it really hard to get over them. The fact that you gain 1,000 life is a nice bonus because that means Soul Charge and Power Well are alive as well. And I had been originally playing Construction Train Signal Red. I love that card, don't get me wrong. But the thing is, that card's just way too defensive. You can't do anything but defend with it pretty much. Yugioh is much more versatile. You can use it offensively or defensively. And so I've just been finding that this card is so much more live all the time. I do not regret playing Yugioh at all. Then, the last hand trap is a pair of Maxi. This, of course, I was playing a 3 as well, mainly because a card that lets you go draw into your other combo pieces is actually pretty good, because you defend against your opponent while getting set up for your own play, so what's not to like? Without Grand Soil in the deck, though, there's not necessarily a reason to play Earths just for the sake of it, so 3 Maxi did seem kind of a lot, because there were times I'd be drawing it redundantly. You could still fetch this with your dualities, you could still use your other hand traps to slow down the game if you don't have Maxi, and I did need extra room, so that's actually where I cut out slots most recently. I cut down a Veiler and a Maxi because I needed the Soul Charge, and this final card, Book of Moon, the only actual defensive back row that you set in this deck. Book of Moon is phenomenal for all the versatile reasons that you may be familiar with, but it's also great in this deck because it lets you force your effects through. You have a Trishula, your opponent has a breakthrough skill or a Veiler, you force that Trish through and basically just screw them over. If you're playing against a deck with a ton of back row, you can use Book of Moon to force through your Black Rose Dragon. There have actually been games in my meta where I've been trying to fight through Skill Drain or Fiendish Chain. Book of Moon really does put in a lot of work helping you get through that. And then, of course, on top of that, you can shut down Synchro and Xyz summons, block attacks, do everything else that you would normally do. Heck, there are times when I use this thing just to double use, a Psy Blocker's effect. There are just so many uses for Book of Moon that I think it is worthwhile. Now, granted, I did choose Book of Moon as a secondary piece to Effect Veiler, mainly because Effect Veiler leaves your opponent's monsters in vulnerable attack position where you can do the most damage and also crash your witches to get your combos rolling. So there's no question that Veiler is the better card if you put them head-to-head in terms of just attack stopping, or effect stopping, excuse me. But after testing a ton, I've just been finding Book of Moon's always a card that I wanted in there. It's always been on the back of my mind. And so when I finally was able to make some room for it, I decided Book has not been disappointing at all. So I do recommend you guys check that card out. And finally, it's time to build up our extra decks. So at level 5, we are playing 3 Armades, Nitria Beast, and Hyper Librarian. So pretty much, Nitria Beast you need because you play so many Earth monsters. This guy is for free. Lock down all your opponent's spells. It's an auto win in some matchups, and in others, it's just a way to prevent Raigeki. It's a way to prevent your opponent's key plays. It's just such a powerful card because you can, remember, put this on the board with your Soul Charge play or with, as you'll find if you play this deck, with additional monsters next to it. The Nitria Beast is almost never alone. You could power it up with Yugioh, which makes it a real pain to deal with. It's just a phenomenal card. This is the best level 5 in the deck, hands down. In a very close second is Hyper Librarian, because this thing, of course, lets you draw every time you Synchro Summon. You use this thing with your Power Wells and your Clerics to get free Synchro materials, keep drawing cards, and most of the time, almost every time I go for a big push, I'm able to go Nitria Beast, follow up with a Librarian that will bring out a level 3 tuner, and that lets me turn this into a Crystal Wing. So I go Librarian, Beast, draw card, go level 3, sync for Crystal Wing, Synchro Dragon. Beast, Crystal Wing, so block any spells, block a monster effect per turn. That's almost game in a lot of matchups, so phenomenal thing that this deck can do out of nowhere. This is one of those decks that needs a little bit of time to set up, but once it does, it will take your opponent by surprise just with a storm of summons. Armades is really in here because there are some times that I do want to go for a level 5 as a Synchro Climb, but I don't want to waste Librarian or Beast. And also in my metagame, I'm playing against Yang Zings, I'm playing against Eclipse Wyverns and Chaos Dragons. I'm playing against just a bunch of monsters, hand traps, let's say. There are just so many things that I want to be able to stop. Armades takes care of those problems. This is really an optional slot for you if you want to play a different Synchro monster. Feel free to do so, but I have not been disappointed with Armades in the environment that I've been testing it in. Next, we have our level 6s. We have 3 again. We have Psyhemoth, Barkion, and Psychic Nightmare. So Psyhemoth is our wild card slot. This is our generic that basically is a DD Warrior Lady. If it battles, you can banish both monsters. Great. If it dies from a card effect or use it as a synchro material, it's actually a psychic monster, so you can bring this guy right back from the grave, which is pretty good. You get extra mileage out of this guy if you use him as material. Mainly, though, he's in here because I do want to have a generic 6, and I just thought that the Psychic typing would be a good pick, and so far I haven't been disappointed by Sahemoth's performance. Barkion is just like Beast, you need all Earths to summon it, and it's not relevant in every matchup, but a 25 beater that has the ability to lock down entire back rows is a very strong force to have. It's worth the 1 slot in the extra to be able to have a Royal Decree ready at will. Psychic Nightmare is more specific. It needs Psychic monsters, one tuner, one any tuner, and then non-tuner Psychics, but it's very easy to do in this deck. He starts at 2400 attack, then you get to choose a random card in your opponent's hand, declare the type of card, monster, spell, or trap, and if you guess right, most of the time you're going to guess between monsters and spells, and you'll guess right most of the time based on the deck they're playing. You get 1,000 extra attack for the entire turn cycle, so your turn and your opponent's turn. So you get to attack with a 34 monster that pretty much kills anything, and then you have that extra attack so your opponent can't even fight you back. If it fails, you learn the identity of one of your opponent's cards, so you could side blocker it or whatever, and then you can always just synchro up with it as well. It's also a Psychic monster, so just like Sahemoth, you can synchro with it freely. If it dies, you can bring it right back from the graveyard. Very powerful monsters. This guy's actually been so strong that I found I don't need Nothung, and I don't need Goyo Guardian. I do understand Nothung does have that 800 burn effect, but again, still needed the Psychic typing here. And in terms of the attack lowering effect of Nothung, this thing gets over things like Leo anyway, so it outclasses Goyo because it's stronger in attack. It even outclasses Nothung in many ways. This is just an all-around better card in this particular strategy. Next up, we have the Lucky Sevens. We have Black Rose Dragon, Clearwing Synchro Dragon, and Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. So this guy is in here mainly because sometimes your opponent has a ton of annoying back row. You basically will make this thing with a Psy Blocker or Book of Moon or Ghost Ogre to back you up, and that will let you clear your opponent's board in a situation where they are oppressing you with all of their control cards. And that's actually been a game changer. I wouldn't take this card out. I just don't think it's worth taking out when you're not playing back row. You're not investing in cards that'll die anyway, so it's usually worth it. Clearwing Synchro Dragon is just an all-around decent card. Stop your opponent, succeeds from targeting you, stop your opponent's big effect monsters from using their effects. Solid monster overall. The fact that it has 2 negations, I'm finding, is actually something that makes it even better than Crystal Wing sometimes. Depends on the situation, of course, but being able to block a pair of monsters gives you more protection than you would think. And then Odd Eyes I added more recently, but this thing is phenomenal. Being able to shut down Burning Abyss in the battle phase, being able to shut down hand traps so you can attack without fear. There are just so many great things you could do to Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon. I'm sure you guys are finding situations where decks nowadays are really hurt by this. In my meta, it's just amazing against the Frog Monarch hand traps. It's great against the Blackwing hand traps. It's great against the Fright Fur Sheep coming back. They're just Burning Abyss. There are just so many great things that Odd Eyes deals with. And it's a 25 beater, so it's a great basic attacker as well. 8s, we have 3 as well. Just by coincidence, this wasn't by design or anything, but Crimson Blader. This thing is very easy to synchro climb to, and it locks some games out, or locks some opponents out of the game for basically a 2-turn kill, so it's very, very good there. I also like this because I usually will use a jumper to steal a level 6 monster my opponent throws out in like Chaos Dragons or something, or just a Synchro monster against Blackwings. Use their monster to go into Crimson Blader, kill the witch, get the free search, and lock them down. It's just so brutal. Crimson Blader is definitely recommended in this deck. Psyframe Lord Omega is our other generic 8. I really do like the fact that although he doesn't protect your board, he protects himself pretty darn well. You can bring back, like, if there was a game I got hit by Chain Disappearance game 2, you can return your things. I didn't get it out that game, but you can actually return all your guys if they're banished by using his return effect. You can recycle him so that you have more level 8s to go for, kind of cheating the building of the extra deck so you don't have to play so many level 8s. All around a phenomenal card. Also lets you see another card in your opponent's hand so you can go and side blocker them. It's just a great level 8 to have. Could it be better? Yeah, but the fact that it's a Psychic monster also means you can bring it right back from the grave if you don't want to recycle him to the extra, so there's that as well. Finally, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. Basically, this deck has a really, really easy play where you use Hush Psychic Cleric and Telekinetic Power Well to bring out both Naturia Beast and this guy in the same turn. It happens very reliably. I was actually quite surprised with how often it happens. It's definitely worth playing Crystal Wing. You get to negate any of your opponent's monster's effects once per turn and gain that monster's attack if you destroyed it. And then, if he happens to battle a big monster, level 5 or higher, you just gain that opponent's monster's attack to do 3k straight to the face. So you can push for games straight through your opponent's monsters. You can lock them out in a pretty much Quasar or Cyber Dragon Infinity style. Like, this is just a phenomenal card. And although it's not always live as a level 8 for other decks, I'm finding this deck Synchro climbs up to it just perfectly. Like, this Crystal Wing is pretty much one of the main reasons that this deck is playable again, and it's going to be one of your key players. Finally, we have some tech synchros. We have one Trishula at level 9, one Leo at level 10, and a Star Eater at level 11. So, Trishula, you basically can bring out through 2, 3, 4 is the most common level. Sometimes you can go 3, 3, 3. But the ability to go and banish cards that your opponent has, break up their grave setup, don't trigger things on the field, and attack their hand. Trishula just doesn't need an explanation. He's a phenomenal way to devastate your opponent. Leo, you mainly want to play with your opponent's monsters, or if you have your Mythic Water Dragon. I'm finding just stealing your opponent's boss monsters that are at level 8 and turning them into this guy is amazing, and I definitely wouldn't take this guy out. You can Synchro climb up to him, but most of the time that's not efficient, so that's why the Water Dragon is in there as well. And then finally, Star Eater, I basically had an extra slot in this extra deck. I was wondering what to put with it. I considered Xyz monsters. They're just not consistent enough because you don't get the trigger effects of your Psychics if they're not destroyed or if they're not sent to the graveyard by Synchro summoning. Xyz materials just get untethered from those effects, and you don't get what you want. Star Eater was actually a really good niche synchro here because at level 11 it gives me a little extra coverage for a Water Dragon or the opponent's monsters that I steal, as opposed to just a level 10 Leo. And then the fact that it's a 32, I mean, like, it has a hole in its defense, I'll admit, but it's just a good wrecking ball. You can get right through your opponent's defenses, and 32 can usually go and hit your opponent really hard or knock them out of the game. So that's really why this is in there. If you watched this video in its entirety, then thanks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this as much as I did putting it together, testing it out, and refining it for you guys. And so, without further ado, let's go through the deck profile. So first we have 2 Effect Veiler, 2 Esper Girl, 2 Ghost Ogre, 3 Hushed Psychic Cleric, 3 Jurigato, 3 Curry Bandit, 2 Maxi, a Mythic Water Dragon, 2 Psyblocker, 1 Psychic Commander, 2 Psychic Jumper, 3 Serene Psychic Witch, and 2 Silent Psychic Wizard for 28 monsters. For our spells, we have a Book of Moon, 2 Emergency Teleport, 1 Mind Control, 3 Pot of Duality, 1 Raigeki, a Soul Charge, and 3 Telekinetic Powerwell for 12 spells, making the whole deck list 40 cards. And finally, for the extra deck, we have an Armades Keeper of Boundaries, a Naturia Beast, and a Hyper Librarian at level 5. Level 6, we have HTS Psyhemoth, Naturia Barkion, and Psychic Nightmare. For 7s, we have Black Rose and Clearwing Synchro Dragon, if I can even get those in there. Yeah, there they are. And Odd Eyes Meteor Burst Dragon, so 3, 3, 3. Crimson Blader we have, or level 8s, we have Crimson Blader, Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, and Psyframe Lord Omega for our 3 8s. We have 1 Trishula at 9, 1 Leo at 10, and a Star Eater at 11. So down in the comments below, let me know what you guys think of the deck, anything that you would change, anything you have to suggest. This is a different type of Psychic deck that I've been playing in the past, so I am kind of newer to Banish Psychics, but so far I'm really liking how they play, and I feel like I'm getting the hang of it, so I think this is a pretty decent way of running the deck, but you know, especially if you have more insight that I have not seen yet, then I'd be sure to hear that. Don't forget to watch the rest of the video if you have any questions on why I put certain numbers in. Usually it's because of whatever situation I want to address in the local metagame that I play in, so the types of friend decks that I'll play against, but you know, sometimes I'll have reasonings in there already explained in the earlier part of the video, so don't forget to check that out because that does exist. And yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Feel free to try it out for yourself, and let me know how that works for you. This is JDGaming. Hope you guys enjoyed once again, and I'll see you guys next time.